Okay? All right. Good morning, everybody. Do I hold both or? Thank you. Unfortunately, this is the first time that I'm using a teleprompter, so you have to pardon me of the glitches. And at the outset, I'd like to thank Geetam and all the organizers for inviting me to be a speaker today and to participate in this Geetam TEDx event. I would like to compliment the young team who are gracious to coordinate with me and bear with me and do this wonderful coordination. And it's lovely to be able to talk to all of you, the young students, the faculty, the entrepreneurs here, and members of the media, and my co-panelists who are going to be in this event today. And I've been given a very interesting topic of education and politics shaping India's future. And I'd like to start off on an optimistic note, saying that I see a very bright future for our nation, given our demographic profile and the aspirational core of the younger generation. And I'm sure that it will have a positive impact globally also. I would like to say that both politics and education are great enablers. And I think the need of the hour is to strengthen both and also to bring focus to both. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has been the ethos of our tradition and our education. And politics needs to reaffirm this universal commitment for both our individual and collective growth. As we are all aware, India is a very diverse entity living in many layers, whether social, regional, cultural, or economic. Despite diversely varying academic and literacy levels across the nation, our people remain a highly adaptive population, resourceful enough to adapt to emerging technologies for their enablement and progress. This is obvious with the current density of smartphones and the level of penetration of internet all across the country. The challenge before policymakers and the nation is to create a level playing field that would penetrate through these layers of a highly diverse population to enable them towards opportunities and to be productive assets to society and the nation. As nearly all things the world over, political will and the follow-up actions are the key drivers towards reform and progress. As an aspirational nation with great potential, but yet to be realized demographic dividend, educational reform is key to empowerment and access to opportunity. Educational reform is therefore an ongoing enablement process by the government to cater to a constantly changing environment and the challenges that the environment throws up. Today, the world faces the challenges of an increasing population and its associated stress on global resources, and hence shrinking opportunities and leading to falling standards of living. The world is also subjected to the challenges posed by climate change, strife, the irreversible damages of war, and an emerging environment of bitter trade wars, as we are seeing now, necessitated by protection to domestic industry or agriculture, and brought on by diminishing employment opportunities in their respective nations. While the advent of technological change is a constant, emerging technologies hold the potential for new opportunities and enablement, and are also disruptors to some existing jobs and economies. As in most of the developed and developing world, India too faces a severe disparity in income and affluence levels, with several million still living below this poverty line. This is definitely a big challenge to our nation. Given the above snapshot of the current global situation and ongoing challenges, political will and education are the keys that unlock the potential for fostering individual and collective growth and for cultivating a collaborative and mutually beneficial environment worldwide. At the outset, I would like to pose this question about education and its purpose to all those who are present here. Apart from the larger objective of learning and growth that creates a path to jobs and a career, what should the broader and egalitarian purpose of education be? While each of us might have our own definition, and at the risk of sounding utopian, I would like to say that education has to serve the purpose of not only individual growth, but also help channelize our knowledge and energies for the collective development of communities, nations, and of course the world. But I would like to each of you to ponder on that question about what purpose education should serve. Please remember that while necessity has been the mother of invention, the most enabling innovations and technologies have impacted humanity in numerous positive ways. Most Nobel laureates of the world have been credited with work that served humanity in positive ways. To give just a couple of examples, discovery of medicines that have been lifesavers, and also discovery of mobile technologies that have shrunk the world. For India's future, building a strong academic and knowledge foundation and inventing creative solutions for a global worker market could pave the way towards growing a value-added products and services economy. As you all know, our services economy is strong, and that has created so much of employment, that has been the major constituent of our GDP, and I think it is to grow in that direction in a better way. Although my stint as the Cabinet Minister for HRD has been which has subsequently been renamed the Ministry of Education, has been brief, I shall try and touch on as many relevant topics as I can to put together a perspective of how political, government will, and governance and decision-making intersect to impact the quality of education and what had been done for some of the areas that matter, whether it was school education, skilling, higher education, the accreditation framework, and leveraging of technologies for enablement, enhancing the qualitative factor in imparting learning, and also teaching methodologies. While reiterating the fact that India's diversity is immense, cutting across social, cultural, and economic levels, the aspirations and the hunger for learning and growth and the quest for a decent livelihood remains homogeneous, whether they are students from a rural hinterland or from our towns and cities from all across India. In my earlier responsibility as the Minister of State for Defense and Government of India for about 7 years, I had the pleasure of interacting with our youth from all the regions across our nation, whether it was during the NCC camps or at signing schools across the country. What struck me during these interactions was and also warmed my heart, was to see their sense of confidence and also their positive attitudes of all these youngsters, irrespective of their economic, social, or cultural backgrounds. So as a nation, we owe it to them to create an enabling environment of learning, personality development, skilling, and growth in a uniform manner and across the country. This is also an imperative for the nation if we are to reap the so-called demographic dividend as a growth engine that will bring prosperity to the nation. Ever since the beginning of India's economic liberalization in 1991, I'm sure most of you weren't born then, the nation's untapped economic potential has been unleashed, thereby giving us the resources needed for nation building. We unleashed the true economic potential of the nation then, which has contributed to the subsequent growth across these years. Subsequently, there have been several key reforms that have impacted our education system that has fulfilled our national quest for universality of primary education and enabled the growth of the learning curve of the nation. I will give you some of the examples. Can I have the slide or of the first slide? Some of the examples that have actually driven created the infrastructure and the growth in the country on the academic platform are examples that I'm going to put up. The extensive network of the Kendriya Vidyalayas spanning across the country that cater to children of the various schools. Then, sorry, can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, I'm still talking about the Kendriya Vidyalaya network. And also the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya network in every district of the country to give access to qualitative and residential school education to the academically strong students from underprivileged backgrounds. By the way, both these, the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas and the Kendriya Vidyalayas remain our top performing schools across the country. Students from these two schools continue to do very well. The Right to Education Act 2010, which gave free, universal free education until 8th class to every child, which has expanded the reach of primary education to every corner of the nation, coupled with the midday meal for their nutrition. I think this has been a very, very far-reaching initiative. The National Skilling Mission, objective of skilling millions of youth across the nation in multiple verticals and as per industry and market standards and within a vocational framework acceptable and recognized by those particular sectors. There were 28 sector skills courses to begin with based on the industry verticals, which have expanded subsequently. The NSDM was the financial support body which was supposed to fund these skilling institutions. Giant leap in the capacity creation of higher educational institutions funded by the Government of India, including new IITs, IIMs, NITs, central universities, architecture schools, and new institutions called the ISERs, where the fundamentals of science were strengthened. You could get a degree in the fundamentals of science, especially if you're research-oriented. That proved to be a strong building blocks. These were new initiatives that were taken in the recent past. Substantial budget allocation towards the modernization of polytechnics and ITIs. Several triple ITs in the public-private partnership board, most of which have become iconic institutions. Strengthening of the academic bodies with the sole purpose of improving the academic standards and recognizing those institutions. By the way, very few institutions in India are still in global rankings. So I think we have a long way to go in terms of that qualitative factor and what makes an institution of excellence. The conceptualization of the National Knowledge Network, the digital broadband network for faster sharing of knowledge and co-working between higher educational and research institutions. I think that has been a fantastic initiative which has given access and sharing of knowledge, not only for the enhancement of knowledge, but also for research purposes. The national education policy, which has been rolled out during the COVID years, this has also been done by eminent people, and they have given some very far-sighted recommendations for strengthening the academic framework of the entire nation. So these are some of the things that have happened in the apologies for, yeah. So this is some of the things that have happened in the recent part, but I think one of the things that the NEP needed to articulate was a clear roadmap and the resource selection, resource allocation for the seamless implementation of those wonderful recommendations. While education remains a concurrent subject, I think most of you should understand that a concurrent subject means it is the responsibility of both the central government and the state government. So it is the joint responsibility. I would like to highlight some of the shortcomings during the years that have gone by, not with the intention of the blame game, but with the objective of learning from our past mistakes. Although the spend, can we have that slide, please? Some of the shortcomings of the past. I think this is the second point. The first point was that, the grand intention of the founding fathers that was on education, we should at least spend 6% of our GDP. But in reality, it has hovered around 3 to 4%. So we haven't spent adequately, right from the founding years, on the education. So I think that was, maybe we had other, social needs to take care of, so and also infrastructure building for a new nation. But that benchmark of 6% was never met. You're gone back to the previous slide. I want the next slides, please. Yeah. The lack of political will across states to prioritize the environment around the government schools, especially the qualitative aspects, including facilities, faculty, pedagogy, budget provisions for personality development through activities such as sports, scouts, NCC, and other extracurricular activities remains minimal or non-existent. I think personality development, instilling those proper value systems, is something that is core to every youngster, and the spending by states varies drastically. I've seen some states that are very, very progressive spend a lot of money on these activities, whereas it's absent in some of the states. Neglect of government-funded skilling institutions like the polytechnics and the ITIs, vital building blocks for nurturing the manufacturing sector and the MSME sector, which forms the bedrock for our manufacturing sector. Absence of joint ownership for skilling institutions by industry. Lack of coordination between the accreditation bodies of the central government and the state councils to nurture and strengthen the quality factor in academic institutions. These are some of the shortcomings that I'm highlighting. Capacity creation shortfall in higher education institutions due to lack of resources. Fortunately, that has been bridged by the private sector, institutions like GITAM and universities and institutions across the country, which have created the capacity and the facilities for us to access higher education. Although, most have been driven by the profit motive. Nevertheless, the capacity creation has happened. India remains a nation that holds high economic potential despite a lopsided mix of agriculture, manufacturing, and services. As you're all aware, while agriculture is the biggest employer, the GDP contribution of agriculture remains between 16 to 18%, manufacturing about 25%, while the services sector has been taking a big leap, and rightfully so. I think you are all aware how our IT sector grew, our knowledge sector has been growing, and how intellectual property creation has been happening, but unfortunately for companies abroad. The IP creation that is done eventually is the IP of a company which is abroad. So that is where we need to, although we've become a very vibrant services economy, I think that is what we should focus, that eventually that IP has to belong to the nation. That is true value addition and value creation for the nation. A few months ago, I attended this NVIDIA conference in Mumbai, where the founder, Jensen Huang, was predicting that India was on the threshold of a great opportunity for leveraging AI for building value-added products and services, and that India should capitalize on the moment. We had a similar opportunity with software when the services industry took off, but unfortunately, with minimal Indian IP ownership, the point I was making earlier. I certainly hope that the AI opportunity would script a better story, where, we have products and IP that becomes the ownership of the nation. Given the above reality, and having mentioned the above shortcomings of the past which needed to be addressed effectively for the future, it is imperative on the nation to develop the following. Can I have the next slide, please? Strengthening early childhood interventions, including nutrition and environment. The point slide. That's all right. Yeah. No, this is, again, you've gone back. I need you to go forward. Anyway, so I think what is needed going ahead is strengthening early childhood interventions, including nutrition and the environment, something that was recommended in the NEP that was announced during the COVID years. And the individual approach could be left to states with effect and to monitor them for effective implementation. Raising the qualitative and wholesome atmosphere around school education, whether it is the facilities, the faculty, or the environment for ongoing learning for teachers. Moral values, ethics, consciousness towards the ecology and environment, and community upliftment has to be an integral part of our school education. I think that is where the actual character building and the responsibility for society happens. I think that has to be integral to any school environment and school curriculum. Focused development of skilling centers around districts and towns in tune with the requirements of the local economy on the lines of community colleges in the United States. I think that's a great initiative that is dependent on the local economy and the local skills needed. Strengthening the ITIs and the polytechnics with a curriculum and standards set by industry. That is very important, because eventually the skill sets have to be, the students have to be industry ready. Industry-academia partnership is paramount here, where, hand-holding by industry is a very, very important factor. Proactive partnerships between Government of India, state governments, industry, and financial institutions toward creating and strengthening innovation and entrepreneurial hubs backed with adequate mentoring. In our own backyard, T-Hub in Hyderabad is a very good example. Unburdening higher education institutions from regulatory compliances. Like, as part of the NEP, I think one of the burdens on the higher educational institutions has been the amount of paperwork that they have to do and the compliance work that they have to do, while encouraging them onto the path of excellence through an environment of research, innovation, enterprise, and entrepreneurship. Substantial increase in research spending in collaboration with industry and academia with clear objectives and focused spend. Unfortunately, research spending in India still remains very, very minimal, which definitely needs to be stepped up if we are to gain a stronger foothold in the IP arena of creating our own intellectual property and thereby greater value addition to whatever comes out of India. We live in a constantly changing world, and we owe it to the future generations to give them a better world free of strife and in harmony with nature. The quality of political leadership and the nature of our education are going to be determining factors that would shape the future. With enlightened youth, armed with the appropriate value system, I'm certain that India will be the torchbearer to a better world. Like one of the objectives of politics, whether cutting across party lines, should be how do we enhance the quality of life for each and every living being in our country or in this world. And I think if that collective focus is there, and if we say that we can enlighten and empower our future generations through a better education system, I think that would be the path to a better world. Thank you for this opportunity, and Jai Hind.